Welcome to the WAHHI 2020 Author Series. My name is Betty Hambleton, and I am very happy to be your host today. I'm the president-elect of WAHHI, and I'm filling in today for Robin Zimmerman, who has done a masterful job of hosting our webinars this year. We hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving this year, although we know it was quieter and more secluded for many. And thank you for joining us as you are busy getting ready for your Christmas and Hanukkah celebrations. We are so pleased today to be joined by Susan Zurenda, who is the author of Bells for Eli. While we're waiting for others to join, we want to get to know more about you. So we're going to ask some fun questions. But first, I want to introduce Janet Porter, who really needs no introduction because she's been with us all these months interviewing our authors. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, Betty. How are you? And it's so good to see you. You're in your red sweater. You're all dressed up there, and I've got my
Santa.
I got my Santa sweater on. Yeah, I got Santa's. So I think we're good to go here. I had to practically strip my clothes off to show you that, but you got the impression. So it's good to see you. You doing good for the holidays so far?
Doing good. It's been very much of a challenge this year for us to adjust not only our lives, but our programs to meet the needs of our WAHHI members. And for months, we've been planning for 2021 and how to connect virtually and in person. Tamara's going to be talking to us a little bit more about that later in the webinar. So we'd like to get to know a little bit about our audience today, Janet. We're going to do this through polling. The way to participate in a poll is just to put your cursor over your answer and click. Your responses are all anonymous, but they will be tallied. We're asking for questions about the holidays today. The first question is, will you be staying at home for the holidays? Answers are yes, no, or don't know.
You know, Betty, this is such a challenging time for people, and I'm surprised by the number of people I talked to. And in fact, you know, we were talking earlier who are still figuring out their holiday plans based on making sure that where they were planning on going, people are, you know, safe and everything. So, it looks like from our audience so far today that we have that 86% of the people are staying home for the holidays on Hilton Head or in Bluffton or wherever they are. And 14% are not staying home and are doing some traveling. You know, it's interesting because the CDC gave a lot of warnings about people not traveling during the holidays, and there was over a 50% decrease in people flying over Thanksgiving. And they don't know really in terms of what it was relative to people driving. So the COVID warnings seem to have, you know, really been taken seriously. However, we know that we've had a post-Thanksgiving spike in COVID. You know, it hasn't been it's even evident here on Hilton Head. We aren't having the spike that they're having in the rest of the country, but it's certainly straining hospital staff and resources in so many other parts of the United States. In South Carolina, we've had 4,800 COVID deaths, 97 in Beaufort County. So, you know, we want to remind everybody to continue to practice social distancing and wearing masks as hard as it is and as tired as we all are of it. It really is the safest thing we do until we get vaccinations available here.
And Janet, I know so many people, including myself and my husband, who are anxious to see their children and grandchildren, but are staying home because the kids especially are being exposed at schools.
Betty, Jim and I were isolated for Thanksgiving, but wonderful friends invited us to join them. And we were planning, there were going to be 9 of us. And about a week in advance, they wrote and said, you know, if you're nervous about coming, you know, please let us know and we'll prepare a platter for you. And that was so wonderful because that's what we actually took them up on. We actually had them, you know, prepare a platter for us, and we just went and picked it up. My husband's 77 and he's very cautious. And we, you know, we felt lucky to have such thoughtful friends, but we're just being real careful.
So our second question, Janet, is have you been tested for COVID? And again, answers are yes or no.
Yeah, I'll be anxious to see how many people have been tested. We almost asked how many people have been tested and tested multiple times. So let me share with you that of the participants who've participated, I'm going to close the poll, and we have 71% who haven't been tested and 29% who have been tested. And let me just share with the people who haven't been tested and maybe haven't talked to anybody how incredibly lucky and fortunate and easy it is here on Hilton Head. The hospital is doing the testing. You go between 8 and noon. You stay in your car. When we went the last time, because we've been tested twice just for safety concerns, we got in line at 7:30 and they opened the line at 8 o'clock. And by the time we were done, it was 8:04. So they really, you stay in your car, they test you right in your car and you drive away. And we had results within 48 hours. That's not true in other parts of the country, but it was free, of course. So you don't need a doctor's prescription or anything. So we are so fortunate in Hilton Head compared to other parts of the country. So if you are suspicious of being in contact with someone or have symptoms, don't hesitate to go to the hospital. It's really easy and very safe.
Right, and painless. It was not bad. I got tested once and it was not bad at all.
No, exactly.
If you're just joining today's WAHHI author webinar, we're getting to know a little bit about our audience. In a few minutes, we will be meeting with Susan Zurenda, who is author of Bells for Eli. We can always use ideas for gifts to give during the holidays. So we're going to pick your brain a little bit about what is the favorite gift you're giving this year. Please chat in any advice you would give to others. All you have to do is put your cursor on the toolbar and click on the chat icon. And that toolbar is either depending on your device, either at the bottom of your screen or at the top. Everyone will be able to see your comments and you will be able to see the comments of everyone else. So if you want to have a surprise for somebody who might be tuned into this webinar, you might want to hold back. We'll give you a minute to respond. Janet?
So Betty, I have to tell you, I'm so excited to share with everybody, and you might, if who's looking for a last minute gift, that I had a friend of mine give me a wonderful gift of a book of the month club. So in that particular product, you get to pick from 5 books in January and February. I've already picked my January book and I get that all year long. And that inspired me because my sister is, we all have somebody who's really hard to buy for. My sister is so tough to buy for, and my older sister, and she loves mysteries. So I found a mystery only book of the month club. And in that particular club works where they actually pick the best-selling mystery of the month. And when I went and looked and saw what they had done for previous months, they had lots of ideas. So I just thought you might think about that. And let me share with you some of the ideas that are coming in that everybody can see.
Great.
Some people are talking about fresh fruit delivery from Harry and David, or Amazon gift cards, which is great. Shelley indicated that she sent somebody a paint by number canvas, which is good. Constance said she sent money. Who doesn't love money? I mean, really, what a great idea. My friends here in Spartanburg are receiving Low Country gumbo. Susan Zurenda said. So one of our favorite quick meals was shrimp, and a number of people said they're giving coloring books and gift cards. So lots of ideas. But, I think all of us at this time of, right before that week before Christmas, particularly with the delivery problems, maybe have that one person we're stumped with. And of course, a gift card is always a great idea if you are really stumped with someone. I might have a niece and his fiance, and I was stumped for them, and that's what I gave them. But do you have any tips, Betty?
Well, it's always hard, to buy for all the our grandkids are young adults now. It's always hard. So, gift cards, they're happy with that. But as I shared with you earlier, fruit has been a big thing for us to send to our our families were always mindful of healthy eating during flu season and during the pandemic. So that's been a big thing for us, and they seem to enjoy it.
I'll tell
And
you,
the question,
I gave my great nieces Monopoly Disney, and
oh,
my sister and my nephew want to absolutely shoot me because they are addicted to to Monopoly Disney. So it's great when you can pick. They're 5 and 8 years old. So people have
it's
mentioned
easier.
it
It's
is.
easier
It is.
then.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So
For
people
sure.
have mentioned, Betty, Susan said she sent eco-friendly friendship drying balls, less wrinkles. Somebody, Janet Fleming, said nuts.com is outstanding. Lots of choices, not just nuts, and they come in a fun box. So lots of good ideas. We love to help
Great.
in the author series, not just with getting to meet an author, but tips. So Betty, I think we accomplished our goal of helping people. And then we also love at this time of year to hear about any book recommendations.
Right. Of course, we're buying books for others because readers often are friends with lots of people who read. And are all, so everyone likes to share titles. Um, if you would enter into your chat the book you're most excited to give your friends this year, maybe we'll give some people ideas for last minute gifts to pick up.
Betty Bobby said News from the World, which before the movie comes out, which is a great movie and it's starring Tom Hanks. And News from the World I read in one of my book groups. And Tamara suggested The Warmth of Other Suns, which I think won the Pulitzer. So that was a terrific book by Isabel Wilkerson. Homecoming shall be recommended. So we'll keep, if you want to see the chat and can't see it, just go to your toolbar and click on chat and you'll be able to see, and people can continue to chat in, Betty, as we start our webinar.
Right.
So Betty, I'm going to sign off now and let's get started, okay?
Okay, we're ready. And ladies, welcome again to the Women's Association of Hilton Head 2020 Author Series, and a happy belated Thanksgiving to all of you. My name is Betty Hambleton, and I am serving as the WAHHI President-elect this year. We are so pleased to introduce to you Susan Zurenda, who has written a tender book called Bells for Eli. If this is your first Zoom webinar, let me explain how this works. First, although you can see and hear me, no one can see or hear you. Second, we want to hear from you. How do we do that? Well, if you move your cursor to the bottom of the page, again, on some devices, it may be at the top, you will see the toolbar. Staying with that toolbar, you will notice an icon that says chat. Clicking on that icon means you can both make comments and see the comments of everyone else. We're pleased that Nancy Fish has joined the WAHHI team as our technical leader. Nancy will be responding to chats throughout the webinar. For example, if you have technical problems, chat and everyone will see your question and your answer. And now Janet Porter will be back with us to chat with Susan Zurenda. Janet?
Thank you, Betty. So it's my honor today to introduce all of you to Susan Zurenda, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. But before I do, I want to show you all my Christmas sweater. I'm wearing a Christmas sweater that has Santas on it. So ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Hanukkah. I hope you are enjoying the holidays, although I know we're going to be more secluded than usual this year. So I had a chance to talk to Susan on Monday, and I'm looking forward to you getting to know her like I did a little bit on Monday. After teaching literature, composition, and creative writing to thousands of high school and college students over 33 years, Susan turned her attention to putting a novel in her heart on paper. And the genesis of which started with a short story that won a fiction award some years ago. She is delighted to present her debut novel to us, Bells for Eli. It was published in March 2nd of 2020 and has been selected as a 2020 Notable Indie Award winner. And the book was a Best Book finalist in 2020 from the American Book Fest. So she's not only published a great book, but it's getting a lot of notoriety. And I think she got an award the other day too, which we'll talk a little bit about. During her years of teaching at Spartanburg Community College and then as an AP English teacher at Spartanburg High School, Susan published a lot of short stories, and she won numerous regional awards for those short stories, such as the South Carolina Fiction Prize, which she won twice, the Porter Fleming Competition, the Southern Writers Emerging Writers Fiction Contest, and the Jubilee Writing Competition, which she also won twice. So Susan lives in Spartanburg, South Carolina with her husband, Wayne. Welcome, Susan.
Hello. See if I can undo I can't start my video. There we go.
There you go.
Now I'm here.
Yeah, good to see you, Susan.
Oh, so nice to be here. And I'm just delighted to be with everyone. And I enjoyed all those Christmas questions. I'm still not quite through shopping yet.
Yeah. So Tamara, our president, said right before we got on, Susan, and before you got on, that she was playing pickleball earlier today, and that her pickleball partner cursed her out for making her read Bells for Eli because she was up late at night reading it and couldn't put it down, which is
that's lovely for me to hear.
Yeah, it's always a great compliment, isn't it? So, let's start. I want to remind people that we've had this happen before. So I just want to remind everybody, you can chat in to ask questions yourself of Susan. And all you do again is go to your toolbar at the bottom and chat in whatever question, and I can see those questions as a moderator and I'll ask them of Susan. So Susan, let's start by, I want to commend you for teaching creative writing to thousands of students over the years.
Well,
What an important thing to be a teacher today and to do that for 33 years. So talk a little bit about your background and what drew you to teaching and being an English teacher, first of all.
okay. I actually started out, believe it or not, as a music major. And I took a course in Southern literature as an elective my sophomore year. I went to Converse College. And that class, we studied 4 female writers from the mid-20th century. We studied Flannery O'Connor, Catherine Ann Porter, Eudora Welty, and Carson McCullers. And my life changed. I mean, in all honesty, I never wanted to be a performer, a musical performer. And when I took that class in literature, I just knew that I had found where I needed to be. I mean, I'd always loved to read, and I'd always enjoyed English in high school. So I changed. I became an English major, and I always wanted to write in some form or fashion. And I started out in journalism. And I realized pretty quickly on when I got married that this was in the old days when newspapers were really newspapers, and they went to bed about midnight, and they were trying to get the latest news into the paper the next morning. And I realized that it would be very hard to start a family with a husband who worked first shift and a wife who basically worked second shift. So I literally, almost by default, pulled out the teaching certificate that my father had insisted that I get while I was in college, and applied for a job teaching English. And it was the best thing I ever did. I loved teaching English. And, it is true that I more or less kind of fell into it, but it just satisfied me in on so many multiple levels. And I taught, the first couple of years, I taught junior high students, and then I taught in the community college for 20 years. And the last 10 years, I went to high school and taught AP English at Spartanburg High School here in where I live. And they were my favorite years because those students were so doggone smarter than I am, and they kept me on my toes, and I learned from them.
Isn't that wonderful? So it must be so exciting. So we want to talk about the fact that here you are, and you've written short stories all these years, and now you read a novel, and it's getting all these accolades. And I was so excited to meet you just because I was so excited for you after all these years to have a hit novel.
Oh, you're so kind, Janet. I appreciate it. And it is different to have a debut novel when you have reached the mature age that I have reached. And I guess I'm living proof that we can always work toward our goals, no matter what.
Well, I know you started teaching at 10 and you're only 43, so
Oh,
right.
right. I turned 65 on my birthday.
Well, how terrific. I mean, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so tell us about the awards you've received. And I think you just got another one recently besides the ones I mentioned.
I don't think so. It's nominated for some other ones, but nothing has come through. The first award the book got was early on. It's called an Okra pick. It's not Oprah. I wish it were Oprah, but
Yeah.
it's still very, very nice. And that means that the Southern Independent Booksellers Association, they call it Okra because they choose fresh picks each season. So when my book came out, even though it came out in March, it was considered to be in the winter season last year. So that was its first award, and that one was really, really important for me because I love independent bookstores. It has been nominated for a pushcart prize. An excerpt of it has. So that's something that's happened recently. Maybe that might be something that you've seen. But the other two that you mentioned, that's mainly it. It was Book of the Month on a online site at the Long and Short Reviews. But anyway, I'm very grateful that it has been well received since I certainly have not been able to be on the road to
So,
get the book out.
so Susan, most of our readers are have not read the book in advance. They're coming to hear about a new author, and so let's talk a little. Why don't you talk a little bit about the short story and what inspired you, and then what inspired you then to translate that into a novel. So let's learn a little bit about what is now Bells for Eli.
Okay. The short story that I wrote a number of years ago now is titled Law's Passage. And that story has a character very similar to Eli in my novel, Bells for Eli. Law, the character in the short story, is an adolescent, very much like Eli. He's reckless. He takes risks. He's off the rails. He has fallen into drugs in the 70s, and that happens to Eli when he's an adolescent in the 70s as well. But I wouldn't advise reading the short story. It was anthologized some years ago. The South Carolina Fiction Project no longer exists, sadly. It was sponsored by the South Carolina Humanities. It stopped some years ago. I think the money kind of ran out. They gave pretty nice prizes for it. But it went on for about, 18 years, I bet, once a year. And they chose, I've forgotten how many, maybe a half dozen or so each year. So an anthology was published that was called it was called Inheritance, Best of the South Carolina Fiction Project. So Bells for Eli is in there, but I wouldn't advise reading it until after you read Bells for Eli, because it would be a terrible spoiler for the end of the novel, Bells for Eli. But the inspiration for Eli, at least, I'm not sure this is really true of the short story character, but the inspiration is I had a first cousin. He's not living now, but his name was Danny, and he drank Red Devil Lye when he was 2 years old, when his father was blowing up balloons for his birthday party and using the lye like helium to inflate the balloons from a Coca-Cola bottle. And Danny saw that bottle and he picked it up and he drank from it. He survived that accident, obviously, but he was damaged from it, both physically and emotionally. And his childhood was compromised. And I wanted to think about how something that can happen to you tragic that way at a very young age can set the trajectory of a life. So Eli has an accident like the one Danny had, and that's what catapults the novel into action. Now, I didn't grow up with my first cousin in real life. So Bells for Eli is an imagining of Eli and his cousin Delia growing up across the street from each other throughout their childhood years, through their adolescence, and ends when they are in college. But I imagined what life would be like for a boy who was bullied and tormented because of the way he looked on the outside with the tracheotomy and an odd string, and didn't smell good because of a tube in his stomach. And then how the consequences of that childhood accident would still perhaps in ways be with him as an adolescent, even though outwardly everything's normal.
And you placed the book, Susan, in Green Branch, South Carolina in the 1960s. So talk about picking the place and the setting and time of the book.
That's when I came of age. I came of age in the 60s and the early 70s. And I, maybe in a kind of selfish way, I wanted to go back there, and I did. I enjoyed reliving some of the era and some of the music and even the television programs. It was a lot of fun for me, but also because Danny's real life accident happened. I think his accident actually happened around 1957. Eli's happens in 1959. I wanted the medical procedure, and the medical response and the social and cultural response to be as it would have been when my real life cousin had his accident. Because even though, thank goodness, we are more sensitive to people who are different, children have been taught to be more sensitive to people who are different. It's not always true, but in the 60s, that was not so much the fact. Children just responded as they responded, and bullying was not on the radar like it is today. It still occurs today, but we attempt, at least. And I know in my later years of teaching, we attempt at least to have that on our radar. So those are two reasons: the fact that I understand that era, and the fact that I wanted that medical accident to take place in that time period.
Yeah, I think bullying was kind of considered just part of growing up.
Yes.
That's just what happened. You grew up and you just got over it, and it didn't have the association with how damaging it is to so many children.
Yes.
So
I think you're exactly right. We just, we were kind of expected to take our knocks and think that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And we know now that that's not so. And a lot of people are left with long lasting consequences. I mean, Eli has childhood trauma. There's no doubt about it. And that manifests itself in his adolescence. And it's true. Some people do get over it, and some people are simply permanently damaged by it.
Yeah. So Susan, I know, so here you are, and you've written this short story that has personal inspiration, and it's in your heart to write a novel. So talk about the process of deciding to write a novel. And then we talked earlier on Monday, so I told you then that I thought the audience would love to hear about your writing process. So talk about that.
As I said from the start, I mean from college days and before, I've always enjoyed writing. But when I was raising two daughters and taking care of aging parents and teaching full time, and not to mention going through a rather difficult divorce along that route, I just did not have big blocks of time to try to write a novel. I could pull out some hours here and there to write short fiction, but for me, the writing process for writing a novel, I need long blocks of time. And when I sit down, it's often for 3, 4, 5 hours at the time. And I have to remember to get up and walk around. I have to remember to get up and move around a little bit, because I get very involved and into the novel. I think what finally prompted me, it was, several years. I retired from teaching in 2013, but I went to work with Kathy Bennett at Magic Time Literary Publicity, doing most of her writing for her. And that threw me going to conferences, going to cocktail parties, meeting authors. That threw me into the world of authors. And I met some really, really wonderful, have met some really, really wonderful people this way. And at some point I thought, you either do it now or you don't do it. It's time. It's like they say the perfect storm. It's like here comes the inspiration from meeting authors. You're now at least semi-retired. So these things came together and I just said, it's time. It's time to do it.
And then we talked about the fact that you talk about writing like for 4 or 5 hour blocks for over a year, and talk about that process.
I wrote the initial manuscript for Bells for Eli over the course of about a year, writing maybe 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. And sometimes I'd start before dinner at about 5 o'clock, and my husband would, I'd stop and break for dinner, and then come back after dinner, and I would just keep on going. And sometimes Wayne would get up the next day and say, well, what time did you come to bed? Did you come at midnight? Did you come at 1? Did you come at 2? And I said, how about it's best that I just don't even know what time. But it's just, I do not, please, ladies, I do not recommend my writing regimen to others, because you are supposed to get up early in the morning when you are fresh. You're supposed to make a pot of coffee, and you're supposed to drink that coffee and write. But for me, night, when there are no distractions, there's nothing to pull me away from the writing, that's the best time for me. I've just found that my inner critic tends to go to bed before I do. And night has just, I'd like to be able, I'm practicing to write in the day, but so far I'm working on this second novel, and I'm still writing it at night.
But Susan, we're getting people like Bobby writing it and saying that they agree that they're inspired at night. We all get a different pattern, but I think you hear about writers who are prolific writers who just have a schedule where they finish a book in 8 weeks, and they do that every year, and they go to the Bahamas or something and just knock it out.
Yes.
And when you started, did you think that it would take you, did you have some idea of a time frame in mind? Did you think, I'm going to devote a year to this, and if at the end of the year I'm not done, I'm going to give up? Or did you have a timeline in mind?
No,
you didn't.
No. My goal was to write this novel, and I really didn't think about it. I just knew when I got to the end, I would try to find an agent, and I am a tremendous rewriter. And I will get a draft, and then what I do in the daytime sometimes is look at what I've written, and then think about and I may make some changes and things during the day. But no, I really didn't have a goal, because I wasn't under a deadline, other than my age is a deadline. But I wasn't under a deadline, so I just wrote it. Once I got started, I wanted to keep it going until I finished. I didn't want to stop and, like have months on end where I didn't write. But and that's been that way with this second novel as well. Once I finally sort of got it going, I started in June. I'm trying to be pretty faithful about writing, several nights a week.
So Susan, you were fortunate, because as a first-time author, you already had a community of writers.
I did.
And so, a lot of first-time writers don't have that community
Correct.
of writers, but because of your years of working with Kathy Bennett, who's been so gracious about setting up, almost all of our authors. So we appreciate Kathy Bennett's work as a literary publicist. And haven't thanked her enough in this series. So, and she usually watches. So I hope she's watching today and knows we appreciate what she's done for Women's Association of Hilton Head Island. But talk about how that community of writers helped you and supported you. And did you rely upon them when you got stuck, or did you not need that help?
Not so much. Although when I finished the initial manuscript, Cassandra King was finishing her manuscript of Tell Me a Story, which is such a wonderful book. If you all have not read it, I'll highly recommend that for a Christmas gift. And Sandra and I traded manuscripts. So I read hers and commented, and she read mine and commented, and it was kind of helpful because we happened to have the same agent. So that was, that was nice as well. But Cassandra is someone whom I did meet through working with Kathy, and we became friends. So she was one thing I think that has helped me a lot in working with Kathy is realizing how much goes on once a book comes out or gets ready to come out. I think a lot of new authors who haven't been exposed to what I've been exposed to don't really realize that as much work goes into trying to get a book in front of readers, marketing it, if you will, as can go into writing it. I've spent every bit as much time, especially with COVID and it being more difficult to get the book in front of readers. It's a different experience. I mean, it's not sort of concentrated, brain time with developing a novel, but as far as minutes and hours and days, I'm certain that I've probably spent every bit as much time working on getting the book out.
Really, I'm surprised to hear that.
No,
When you
it's
talk about
true.
4 or 5 hours a night. So Susan, you obviously have a dog.
I have two.
You have 2 dogs. So tell us about your dogs just for a minute, because we can hear them in the background.
Can you really?
Yeah.
I can't hear them.
Oh, I thought that's what I was hearing.
Well, I do have them, but I don't hear them. But they are 2 Boston Terriers.
Oh, are they? Oh, they
One
are.
is
Okay.
named Delia. She's young, and we got her last summer, and I named her in honor of my main character in
Yeah.
Bells for Eli. And our older Boston Terrier is Beulah. Beulah May is her name.
Oh my gosh. That's
And they are a mess. Boston Terriers are wonderful, loving dogs, but they are extremely energetic and require a great deal of attention.
Yes, that's what I heard. But they're so cute.
They are that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about what you're thinking about for your next novel.
This second novel that I'm working on, I hope it will become a novel. It's got a working title of The Girl from the Red Rose Motel. And it is the story of a very privileged, very smart white boy in high school, a senior in high school, an English teacher. His English teacher, it's not really patterned after me, because this teacher is a lot funkier and hipper and probably a lot nicer than I was.
So it's everything you wanted to be.
I had their reputation of being pretty tough, but when you had to teach those AP kids, you had to do what you had to do. Anyway, the high school English teacher, the boy, and then a teenage girl who is biracial and impoverished and lives in a motel. And she and the boy, Sterling and Hazel, are going to meet. They have already met in in-school suspension, a day of in-school suspension, which is a place this boy, with all of his clout and smarts, never imagined that he would end up. And
so let's go back to Bells for Eli, and with this new book you're writing, do you start with a sense of a theme or a message that you are trying to get across? For example, in Bells for Eli, do you start with that, or do you start with a sense of the characters and the development? Sort of, which comes first?
Well, I think what comes first to me is character. What comes first to me is a character who is in a circumstance, in a conflict that has the potential to change that person's life in some way. I think that's what comes to me first. But I have noticed in my writing through the years, I've only kind of recently realized this, that a big theme in my writing is letting go, the how one handles the inevitability of letting go. It's true in a lot of my short fiction, and it's certainly true in Bells for Eli, though there are many themes in Bells for Eli. I think love is one, uh, responsibility is one, but I think one of the important themes for the protagonist Delia is, grappling with what we do when things are going to be the way they are, and we have to sometimes become a new person because of that.
Yes. So Bobby wants to know where your ideas come from your short stories and your novels. Do they come a lot from personal experience, or where does that come from, that imagination part?
I think often the initial idea, as in Bells for Eli, was inspired by my cousin's accident drinking lie. I mean, that was the inspiration. And if I think back on my short fiction, that's the case too. They're not, my stories are in no way autobiographical, and yet usually the kernel of that story will come from something either I have experienced or someone I know has experienced. And then I just take that kernel and I just let the characters, I have these characters in my head, and they come alive and they take it in the direction, if that makes sense, where it needs to go.
Yeah, a lot of writers talk about that notion. So Nancy wants to know, how did you inspire your high school students to write?
Oh, well, you know, I taught creative writing at the community college, and that's, I developed the course for it out there, and it was always by the nature of it being creative writing, a small sort of workshop course, and we workshopped with each other, and we read, I would write, they would write, I'd give them a number so that they wouldn't feel self-conscious when we read one another's pieces out loud. That's the way creative writing worked. But when it came to writing about literature, writing essays as you do in English class, what I hope is that that maybe something in me loved the literature enough so that I could breathe that inspiration into the students. And if they love the literature enough, then they felt a kind of a compulsion to, yeah, let me see, how do I know what I know? If I'm going to write about this play, if I'm going to write about this short story, how do I know what I know? We've talked about it in class. We've analyzed the literature in class, and now my teacher wants me to say blah blah blah. So, and I believe this. I believed it when I taught. I believe it now, that literature, whether you're reading it, whether you're writing it, if you're a student of it, as my students had to be because they had no choice, everybody has to take English in high school and college. And the reason I think you have to take literature is it is one of the most important disciplines of study that we could have. Yes, science and technology are immensely important. Math is important, but literature teaches us what it means to be a human being.
Yes.
Literature teaches us who we are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we don't necessarily have to go out and have a trauma ourselves, or have certain conflicts or circumstances in order for us to understand them and learn them. You become so much wider human being when you read and when you study literature. And I always told them, I said, look, it's sociology, it's psychology, it's history, it's all these disciplines rolled into one. Philosophy, it's everything rolled into one. And I won't belabor this too much, so I can see now you've got me going. But long time ago, and I was teaching technical writing at the community college, a class in technical writing. And I had read a piece in the newspaper about the president of Motorola being interviewed. and the CEO, and he asked to, he was not somebody, he came up through the ranks. He was someone who came up through the ranks. He was not just born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And the interviewer said, what, if you had to name one thing to what you owe your success, what would it be? And he said, reading literature, because it has taught me how to manage people, how to get along with people, what makes people tick, you know, what's in their hearts. And I kept that with me for a long time, that article. And if a student ever said, I don't know why we need to study English, what difference does it make if I read about Hamlet? I'd say, well, let me just tell you about the CEO of Motorola.
Yeah. So Susan, do you have any books? We'd love to hear if you have any books that you'd recommend for people. And
well, you mentioned that, you know, with it being Christmas time and Christmas giving. So I've jotted down a few that I've read lately, and maybe some that I've read in the last few years, and some that are just classics for me. And maybe I'll start with that. The novel that I taught more than any other, and I was never told I had to teach a certain book. When I taught American literature, I chose what I wanted to teach. And I nearly always taught The Great Gatsby. And it's a short book. It's been made into a movie a number of times, but there's something about that book that resonates with me. It's just a beautiful piece of writing. You live with Gatsby, you hurt with Gatsby. The writing is so concise, every word, and Fitzgerald's symbols in that novel are just so enriching in terms of our understanding what makes Gatsby do what he does. And one of the intriguing things to me always has been the point of view in Gatsby. It's Nick Carraway's. Nick Carraway is the protagonist, not Gatsby. Gatsby doesn't change. He's on the same path he's always on. It's Nick Carraway who comes to a different way of seeing the world. And I always wanted to write from that point of view, and that's what I did in Bells for Eli. Eli may be the main character around whom what most of that book revolves, but Delia is the protagonist in Bells for Eli.
Yeah.
And another really classic that I love, that not maybe many people have read is or book, well, several, by Carson McCullers, Member of the Wedding. If you were to ask this old English teacher, I would say Member of the Wedding is a perfectly written novel. It's just perfect in every way. And a lot of folks have read The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by Carson McCullers, because it was made into a wonderful movie with Alan Arkin. And both of those are sort of classics. And then I could go on and on with those, but let me talk about some that are more recent that you all.
Susan, we only have a few minutes, so could you give us a few more?
I would suggest Call Your Daughter Home by Deb Spera. It's a beautiful book. A lot of people have been enjoying World War II historical fiction, and two that I've read recently that I like a lot are The Yellow Bird Sings by Jennifer Rossner, Rossner, and The Last Train to London by Meg Waite Clayton. I've recently also enjoyed, I love Elizabeth Strout, and I've just read Olive again. I loved that book. One of my favorite all-time books in recent decades is A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving.
Yeah.
A Man Called Ove by Bachman, and Euphoria, which is based on some of the exploits of Margaret Mead. Euphoria by Lily King is a wonderful, wonderful book. So there's a few to think about.
So I think you're leaving us with all of us thinking that we wish you had we had you as our English teacher.
Oh, shoot. Well, now you got me. I'm sorry. I know I went on too long about that, but I get really fired up about the importance of literature.
Yeah, and I'm a teacher also, and a student.
Yes, you are.
A student gave me a cross stitch that said, "Teachers create the future."
Oh, that's lovely,
And-
Janet.
Isn't it? Isn't it? And it's like this big. It's, little tiny cross stitch. And I love it. And I love thinking that we as teachers do that. And so thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate,
It has been
and
my
have a happy holidays.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you all for indulging my English teacher rant.
Thank you. And so Betty, I want to, turn it over to you. Betty, you're muted. There you
Thank
go.
you, Janet and Susan, for this enlightening and very inspiring discussion, conversation. It's just amazing. I can't wait to read Bells for Eli. It sounds like a novel that really came from Susan's heart. And now I would like to welcome Tamara Everett, WAHHI's current president, who will tell us about the many interesting WAHHI events that are coming up. Tamara.
Hi there, Betty. Hi, Janet. Hi, Susan. What a great author presentation we had with Susan this afternoon. It was so much fun to hear about her recommendations, love of literature, her story of where Bells for Eli came from. Just a super interview, as always, Janet, as well. Happy Hanukkah and happy holidays to everybody. I think all of us are looking forward for 2020 leaving and welcoming a new year, 2021. Want to make sure you all are checking out the WAHHI website because we do have January events that have been posted for you to register. We're starting off on January 8th, that's Friday, with a member preview of the new year. We're going to walk through all of the different events that are coming up. We are starting an environmental and cultural speaker series. And our very first speaker is going to be Amber Kuhn, who's the executive director of Sea Turtle Patrol. And she's coming in on January 12th to share her information and love around our sea turtles. We also have our author series continuing in January. We are so delighted to have Marie Bostic come in. She has written 18 different novels. She's a USA Today and New York Times best-selling author. And I think she's gonna be, as always with Janet, a great interview. I liked her bio that's online. She believes in the unshakable belief in the power of sisterhood. And that's kind of what we're all about with WAHHI. So it's just awesome to be able to continue our speaker series moving into January. We also have our chef series continuing in January. We have a bourbon tasting experience at the Whiskey Room lined up, and that's for in-person with a small group with a WAHHI only private event, as well as then with in-person online participation, as well as that in-person, so you can taste from home. And finally, we've got Low Country Hunt we had, I think, 23 WAHHI women participate at beautiful Area Hall Plantation in November for a fox hunting expedition and riding the tally-ho wagon, not riding the horses. And we're going to be able to redo that again in January at their next hunt. And so all of those events are up and posted right now for you to register. And I just encourage you to kind of keep looking at the events website. And as the most of the events are posted now, not all are open. They're going to be open for registration month to month as we go to give everybody a fair shot. You will note we are doing a lot on Zoom. Our February membership meeting is going to be an all Zoom meeting. There is no in-person option. As the board and council, we really thought hard about making sure, again, the safety and public health of our members. And given COVID winter and all of the challenges that are happening with the pandemic, really are opting for January, February, and March to be heavy on Zoom programming right now. So hopefully you all can log in, enjoy with your friends around the table, a glass of wine or a cup of tea, whatever you've got. And from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much for your flexibility, creativity, and of course, thank you to Janet and Betty today for what they've done on the author series, as well as our guest, Susan. Happy holidays and happy Hanukkah, everybody. Happy New Year. Back to you, Betty.
Thank you, Tamara. That's a great lineup. We've got a lot of exciting things to look forward to in 2021. I can't believe that we're going into another year already. We want to ask you for feedback also about what you would like for upcoming events. Please let us know your thoughts about this webinar and what programming you would like in the future by responding to the email that you will be receiving very shortly. And finally, we've had a long-standing supportive relationship with Barnes & Noble on Hilton Head Island. And we hope you will stop by there and pick up a copy of Bells for Eli or any of the great suggested titles that have been coming in this afternoon. Thank you again for joining us. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a very happy and healthy New Year. And please make a resolution to attend all our webinars in 2021. Thank you and happy holidays.